I was rushed to the ER last month, and I need to tell you why. Not because I'm looking for sympathy, but because what happened to me could happen to anyone, and what I learned might save your life. If you want to hear the wake-up call that changed how I think about everything, leave a comment saying, "Health?" It was a Tuesday morning when everything went wrong. I was in my office, doing what I do every morning, emails, messages, calendars, layered on top of calendars when the room started to spin. The words on my screen smeared together as if someone had dragged a finger across wet ink. I felt a wave of nausea. At first, I told myself it was fatigue. For 3 months, I'd been stacking 18-hour days, sleeping 4 if I was lucky, fueling with coffee, and whatever food happened to show up in meetings. But this felt different. When I tried to stand, my legs didn't cooperate. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. I couldn't catch my breath. My chest felt compressed, like someone had set a heavy toolbox on it. My hands shook. I reached for my phone to call for help and couldn't make my fingers dial the number. Focus slid off the screen. The phone might as well have been a brick. My assistant found me slumped over my desk about 10 minutes later. I tried to say I was fine, that I just needed a minute, but the words left my mouth slurred and out of order. She called an ambulance on the spot. The paramedics arrived with the calm speed of people who have seen this too many times. They clipped a monitor on my finger, wrapped a cuff around my arm, placed pads on my chest. My blood pressure was 180 over 120. My heart rhythm was bouncing between racing and skipping beats. One of the paramedics, a woman in her 50s, with the kind of voice that cuts through panic, looked me in the eye and said, "Sir, your body is in crisis. We're going to the hospital now." Reality hit me in the back of that ambulance. I'm not invincible. I'm not a machine that can run at full throttle without maintenance. The irony was sharp. I talk constantly about preventive care for rockets, cars, factories, about checking systems, following safety protocols, planning for the long term, yet I'd ignore those principles when it came to my own body. I thought of my kids. I thought of the people who count on me, not just at work, but at home. What if this had been worse? What if I'd had a heart attack at my desk because I was too stubborn to pay attention? The ER was a blur of fluorescent lights and clipped questions. Blood work, EKG, chest X-ray, CT to rule out a stroke, leads on my chest, a monitor registering each irregular beat. A physician named Dr. Sarah Chen walked in with the directness of someone who doesn't waste words. She told me, clearly and without cushioning, that my body was shutting down under acute stress. My cortisol was sky high. I was dehydrated and, despite the constant snacking, effectively malnourished. "When was the last time you had a proper meal and a full night's sleep?" she asked. I couldn't answer. She showed me a few numbers on her tablet values that meant little to me, but clearly alarmed her. "These stress hormones are great for short emergencies," she said, "but yours have been elevated for months. That damages your heart, blood vessels, immune system, digestion, even your brain. Keep going like this, and you're weeks, not years, from a major event." She gave me an analogy that cut through the noise. Running an engine in the red zone. Sure, you get more power for a moment, but you're burning the engine. Eventually it fails. I understood that instantly. I've spent years insisting that we don't redline hardware without cooling and margin. I had been redlining myself without either. They kept me 3 days forced rest, IV fluids, scheduled meals, no laptop, no phone after the first evening. The first night was the worst. Every few minutes, my hand reached for a device that wasn't there. By day 2, something shifted. My thoughts stopped racing. I could think about problems without feeling like I was drowning in them. It felt like walking out of fog into clear air and realizing you'd been breathing shallow the whole time. I started talking to people. My roommate, Frank, was a 62-year-old accountant who'd had a mild heart attack. He'd been working 60 hours a week for years, especially during tax season. "I thought I was being responsible," he said. "Provide for my family now, rest later." Then he told me the line I can't forget. The world didn't end when I wasn't available, but my health almost did. The deadlines he ignored his chest pain for, they came and went without him. The cost of his delay was months of recovery and rehab. A nurse named Patricia had 2 decades on the cardiac floor. She said the pattern repeats. Patients between 50 and 65, high achievers who have been rewarded for outworking everyone else. They all say the same things, she told me. I thought I could handle it. I thought I was tougher. I thought I had time. Your body doesn't care how important your job is. It has limits, and when you exceed them long enough, it breaks. On day 2, a cardiologist, Dr. Rodriguez, came by. He spoke with the gravity of someone who has watched too many preventable tragedies. The human body is remarkably resilient, he said, but not infinitely so. Daily stress, bad sleep, and uneven nutrition accumulate microdamage throughout the system. Most of the time you can't feel it, until one day you do, all at once. He showed me a simple progression. Chronic stress elevates blood pressure, inflamed arteries narrow, the heart works harder to push through constricted vessels. Keep that up, and you're on a highway toward heart disease, stroke, metabolic issues, organ failure. The good news: much of the damage is reversible if you change now. The bad news: if you don't, the probability curve bends toward a serious event within a few years, and sometimes within months. On the 3rd day, Dr. Chen introduced me to Robert, 78, who had been through almost exactly what I was experiencing 23 years earlier. He'd collapsed at 55, spent a week in intensive care, and was told he might not see 60 if he didn't change. He did more than change his schedule, he changed his life. Less work, daily movement, cooking real food, sleeping like it was a contract, investing in relationships, and hobbies that gave him joy. My work got better when I got healthier, he said. Clearer thinking, better decisions, more energy. I stopped operating in crisis mode. He called the extra 23 years he'd lived his dividends. It was the future version of me, standing there, telling me the payoff for doing the unglamorous things. I also met Margaret, 67, visiting her husband. She'd never had a crisis, and she wanted to keep it that way. She built what she called non-negotiables: exercise, nutrition, and sleep scheduled, like meetings protected, not optional. When I'm rested and healthy, she said, I do more in 6 focused hours than I used to do in 10 exhausted ones. And I'm kinder, I listen, I'm present. That stuck with me. Health wasn't a trade-off against productivity or relationships. It was the foundation of both. Before I left, Dr. Chen talked mindset. The biggest challenge isn't diet or exercise, she said. It's changing the belief that got you here. High achievers often have martyrdom, thinking the idea that suffering for work makes you more valuable. You learn to wear exhaustion like a badge. Taking care of yourself feels selfish. She reframed it in terms I couldn't ignore. Health is an investment, not an expense. Invest, and you get compound returns, clarity, energy, better performance, and more years to put them to use. The ripple effects are real. You reduce the burden on family, model healthy behavior for younger people, and remain available to those who depend on you. Since coming home, I've made changes I should have made years ago. The first was sleep, 7 hours minimum. That meant saying no to late-night meetings and some social things I would normally cram in. It also meant setting boundaries that felt uncomfortable at first. The results showed up fast. Clearer thinking, better patience, more consistent energy. The second was nutrition. 3 real meals a day. No surviving on caffeine and conference room leftovers. I brought in help with planning and prep because I know myself complex systems fail under load. The improvement in mood and mental clarity surprised me. The third was exercise. Not a heroic plan, just a 30-minute walk each morning. No special gear, no performance goals. It became my reset switch, a quiet transition from sleep to work that gave back energy for the entire day and helped me sleep at night. The fourth was boundaries. I stopped checking email after 8 p.m., and before 8 a.m., I block time for deep work and protect it. I delegate more instead of trying to carry every task myself. Paradoxically, people got more value from me when I was rested and focused during working hours. I want to be honest, the pull to relapse is still there. There are nights when an idea lights up and I want to write it until morning. There are days when skipping a meal or a walk looks efficient. There are moments I feel guilty for taking time to recover. That's the hardest part, unlearning the belief that exhaustion equals dedication. But I'm choosing to treat my health like the single most important system I manage, because it is. The cost of ignoring it is a hospital bed and a frightened family. The return on investing in it is more life, not just more years, but better ones. If any part of this sounds familiar, don't wait for your own wake-up call. Start today. Start with one small change. Go to bed on time, drink water, take a 30-minute walk, eat a real meal. Take care of yourself with the same rigor you apply to your work. Your future self will thank you, and the people who depend on you will get the best of you for years to come. Share this with someone who is pushing too hard and needs the reminder. And tell me in the comments, what's one change you'll make this week to take better care of your health? You said, continue. ChatGPT said, there's one more thing I needed to build after leaving the hospital. A system, not a vibe, not a resolution scribbled on a napkin. A real system with sensors, thresholds, and fail-safes, the same way we treat flight hardware. I started with monitoring. I wear a device that tracks heart rate, sleep efficiency, and variability. Each morning, I get a simple green, yellow, red readout. Green means proceed. Yellow means reduce thrust. Red means scrub the launch and rest. No arguments, no heroic exceptions. I've learned that when you negotiate with exhaustion, exhaustion wins later with interest. I added preemptive maintenance. Twice a year, I book full labs and a check-in with a physician who is brutally honest. Once a quarter, I do a silent weekend, no work, no screens, just to make sure I can hear my own thoughts without the static of notifications. Every Sunday night, I plan my week with a rule I stole from Margaret: treat sleep, meals, and exercise as meetings with myself. They're on the calendar before anything else goes on the calendar. If something has to move, it won't be those three. People ask if that's practical. What wasn't practical was an ambulance. Boundaries only work if your environment cooperates, so I changed the environment. My phone doesn't enter the bedroom. Email and messaging apps disappear from the dock after 8 p.m. Bright overhead lights in the office dim after sunset, and the screen shift follows. There's a standing agreement with my team. If a decision can be made tomorrow, let it be made tomorrow. What deserves speed still gets speed. Emergencies are rare and obvious. Everything else benefits from a rested brain. I also rewired the way we run meetings. Shorter by default, fewer by design, and each one must justify itself like payload mass. No agenda, no meeting. I ask one question more than I used to. Am I the bottleneck? If yes, I delegate earlier. The habit of hoarding decisions masquerades as commitment. What it really does is throttle the system and exhaust the operator. Family got its own version of the system. I schedule time that isn't after I'm done with work. It's not an afterthought. It's a first thought. Dinner with my kids is a protected window. If something breaks during that time and it isn't life or death, it waits. That's not indulgence. That's choosing to be present for the people who will remember whether or not you looked them in the eye when they were telling you about their day. Motivation fades. Systems persist. Still, there are days when the old reflexes tug at me like gravity. A launch slips, a deadline looms, and I feel the itch to pour gasoline on my schedule. On those days, I read the note I wrote to myself on the discharge paper: red line equals rebuild. I look at the engine diagram Dr. Rodriguez sketched and imagine my arteries as pipes I actually care about. Then I take the walk. I drink water. I eat real food. I go to bed. It's astonishing how many crises disappear after 8 hours of sleep. I've also been thinking about identity. For a long time, I equated being valuable with being available, being admirable with being exhausted, being indispensable with being everywhere at once. The hospital stripped that away. I'm not more valuable because I ignore biology. I'm not more admirable because I endure avoidable pain. The people who depend on me don't need a martyr. They need someone who will be here, clear-eyed and steady, for a long time. If you want a practical starting point, Try this. Pick one metric you'll actually respect. Maybe it's bedtime. Maybe it's a daily step count. Maybe it's a simple 3 meals, no skipping. Give it 7 unbroken days. Announce it to someone who will ask you about it. The human brain treats public commitments differently. It pays attention. Then add the next habit only after the first one feels automatic. Stacking 5 changes at once is just a fashionable way to fail. Another piece I underestimated was joy. Overwork doesn't just damage your heart, it quietly erases your capacity for delight. The morning walk taught me to enjoy the boring good again, air on my face, a sky that isn't a screen, the uncomplicated mood lift of moving a body designed to move. I'm relearning hobbies that aren't monetized or optimized, reading for the sake of reading, cooking a meal that takes longer than a calendar would approve of, calling a friend with no agenda. This isn't retreating from ambition, it's building the fuel depot that ambition actually runs on. I know someone will ask, what about the big goals? The big goals didn't shrink when I started treating health as an investment. They became more achievable. Clearer thinking reduces rework. Consistent energy reduces oscillations. Being present reduces miscommunication. My output didn't drop when I protected sleep. The error rate did. That matters more than an extra hour squeezed from midnight. There's also the matter of permission, especially for people who lead teams. When the person at the top glorifies burnout, everyone else hears the sermon. When the person at the top models boundaries, everyone else gets permission to be human. It's strange to realize that taking care of yourself is a form of leadership, but it is. You are telling the people around you that long-term contribution beats short-term theatrics. I keep thinking about the people I met in those 3 days. Frank, whose calendar survived just fine without him but whose heart didn't. Patricia, who can forecast another preventable admission within a year just by watching someone go back to their old habits. Robert, who cashed 2 extra decades because he changed when it still mattered. Margaret, who built a life around non-negotiables and became more productive, not less. They're part of my operating manual now. Whenever I'm tempted to make an exception, I ask whether I'm writing the chapter I want reread. If you're hearing this, and your first thought is, I don't have time, I understand. That was my line for years. Here's the problem. Biology collects its debts. You can pay in small daily installments, or you can wait for a balloon payment with flashing lights and a hospital wristband. One path is boring, the other is dramatic. Only one is wise. So begin where you are. Turn off the lights at a reasonable hour and go to bed. Put real food on a plate and sit down to eat it without a screen. Step outside and move your body for 30 minutes. Put a fence around your attention at night and in the morning. Build a routine so simple, it's almost insultingly easy, and then respect it because it's keeping you out of rooms you don't want to see again. If this message landed somewhere in you, pass it forward. Send it to the person who texts you at 2 a.m., to the colleague who jokes about living on caffeine, to the friend who hasn't taken a day off in a year. Tell them they're not weak for resting. Tell them they're smart for planning to be here. And tell me one thing you'll change this week. Not everything. One thing. Put it in the comments as a marker you can't ignore. The future version of you is already grateful you did. There's a question I keep on my desk now. What would it take for me to miss a warning again? I answer it like we answer failure analyses. I map the pathways, not the excuses. Exhaustion masquerades as discipline. Urgency disguises itself as importance. Praise rewards the wrong behaviors. I write it where I can see it. Then, I put friction where temptation used to be smooth. Work used to be available in every room of my life. Now it has doors, and those doors have hinges that squeak if I open them after hours. The squeak is intentional. It reminds me that midnight hustle is never silent. The invoice just arrives later. I also rebuilt how I begin a day and how I end one. The morning starts without negotiation. Water, light, movement, a real breakfast. 5 quiet minutes to decide what matters before the world tries to decide for me. The night ends on purpose. Screens down, lights soft, a page of something that isn't about work, the boring ritual that protects everything interesting. It turns out boredom is a good bodyguard. It keeps the circus outside. People ask what changed in the companies. Less theater, more throughput. We trimmed meetings that existed to perform urgency. We separated genuine emergencies from loud preferences. We defaulted to documents, not drive-by decisions. I tell new leaders the same thing Dr. Chen told me in different words. The system doesn't care how heroic you feel. It cares how stable you are. Leaders who can't sleep lead teams that can't breathe. Good engineering is repeatable. Good leadership is too. There's something else I'm still processing. Regret. Not a dramatic, collapsing kind. More like a steady ache for the hours I traded for noise. I think about birthdays I attended but didn't really attend. Conversations where my eyes were there and my attention was in a browser tab nobody else could see. Regret is information. It tells you where to aim your next decade. I'm trying to let it instruct, not indict. The only apology time believes is different behavior. I've noticed how quickly the body forgives when you treat it like a partner. The morning walk used to feel like a concession. Now it's a lever. I come back with better ideas because the thoughts had space to assemble themselves. A proper meal steadies a mood that used to swing with caffeine and deadlines. Sleep stitches the day together so tomorrow doesn't inherit today's mistakes. None of this is exciting. That's the point. Stability doesn't trend, it compounds. I still keep the discharge bracelet in a drawer, not to scare myself, but to stay accurate. Memory edits. It rounds off the edges of pain and polishes the story until it flatters the hero. A strip of plastic refuses to flatter. It says the risk was real and the cost was immediate, and that life gave me a pass I shouldn't assume I'll get twice. When the old story starts to play, the one where sacrifice equals value, I take out the bracelet and let the room get quiet enough to hear the truth underneath the habit. There is a line I repeat to the team and to my kids. Do not borrow from the future to decorate the present. Borrowed sleep becomes anxious thinking. Borrowed meals become afternoon crashes. Borrowed attention becomes mistakes you didn't need to make. The math balances whether or not you like the equation. When I'm tempted to ignore it, I remember Robert calling his extra years dividends. Dividends aren't windfalls. They're the logical result of steady deposits into something that grows when you aren't watching. I've learned that accountability works better as invitation than as punishment. I told a few people exactly what I'm trying to do. Bed by a decent hour, real meals, daily movement, protected family time, and asked them to ask me how it's going. Not to police me, but to witness me. Most of us don't need a harsher critic. We need a kinder mirror. The funny thing is that when I describe the system out loud, several people built their own. Leadership by contagion is still leadership. There are setbacks, travel collapses, routines, crises, interrupt rituals, launch weeks, bend all the curves. When that happens, I use a simple restart rule. Do the next right boring thing. Don't design a perfect comeback. Make a small deposit. Go for the walk even if it's 10 minutes. Eat something that grew in the ground. Put the phone in a drawer and step away. Perfection used to be my excuse for procrastination. Now reliability is my measure for progress. I used to think longevity was primarily a function of ambition and grit. I still value both. But the older I get, the more I see that longevity is mostly about respect. Respect for limits, for circadian rhythms, for maintenance schedules written into organs that don't read calendars. Ambition without respect is reckless. Grit without recovery is self-harm, dressed as discipline. I'm not interested in impressive collapses anymore. I want quiet, durable output. Sometimes I imagine a younger version of myself sitting across the table, the one who believed that exhaustion was the price of significance. I tell him what Patricia told me through 20 years of night shifts and alarms. Your body doesn't care about your legend. It cares about oxygen, nutrients, rest, movement, and relationships. Pay that invoice and you'll be more useful to the work you claim to love. Ignore it, and the work will move on without you. That's not cynicism. It's physics. If you're wondering whether you're already redlining, try a simple test tonight. Close your laptop at a reasonable hour, Make a proper meal, go for a slow walk, and sleep like it's a contract you signed with your future. Notice how tomorrow feels. If the world doesn't implode, and it won't notice that too. The stories we tell ourselves about being indispensable are comforting and false in equal measure. What's actually indispensable is your presence, clear and steady, for the people who need you and the work that benefits from your best thinking. I'm grateful for the wake-up call and determined not to need another one to remember it. I want to be around for the long projects, the ones that take decades, the ones that require not just bursts of brilliance, but long arcs of attention. That means treating this body like the mission-critical system it is. It means guarding the dull habits that make the bright work possible. It means choosing a kind of success I can still carry when I'm old. If you made it this far, consider this your invitation. Choose one safeguard and implement it before the day ends. Put sleep on your calendar like it pays you. Put a simple meal on a plate and sit with it. Put your phone in another room when the sun goes down. Tell one person what you're changing so the promise has ears. Then let the boring, generous math begin. Your life is not a launch window that closes tonight. Give it the maintenance it deserves, and it will give you back years you can fill with the things that actually matter.